It is the students of past and present that make our college what it is. So, as our twin institutes move towards their centenary, we wanted to give a virtual platform to every batch of GSMC to share their fondest memories of college. Their thoughts and emotion will be preserved forever in the form of these reminiscences. I request the tech team to display the GAA membership form. To remain connected to our alma mater and informed about the activities in KEM, including its centenary celebration, we request you to become members of the Gosumec Alumni Association, the official alumni body at SAGE GSMC. All the details on how to become a member and this membership form are available on KEM website. All those who are not members as yet are requested to please visit the KEM website. Today, we have two recorded interviews of alumni of 1954 batch, Dr. Ashok Vidya and late Dr. Manu Kothari. I request the tech team to play Dr. Pandya sir's introduction of Dr. Ashok Vidya Dr. Ashok Vidya.
Thank you for the opportunity to introduce Ashok Bhai, as I have always called him, to those in the audience who have not yet come under his spell. I was exceptionally fortunate. A strange set of circumstances ensured that I had a year to myself before I could start my medical education. A beloved uncle in Rajkot knew Ashok Bhai, who was then at the St. Godandas Sundardas Medical College, and suggested that I meet him for guidance on how I could best utilize this period. Amidst other suggestions, Ashok Bhai recommended that I study the history of medicine and, in particular, Equanimitas, the collection of addresses by Sir William Moseley. I followed his advice, and my life has been immeasurably enriched as a consequence. I have since had several memorable experiences with him. One of these, specially cherished, was when I had the privilege of searching for what we called interesting patients in the various wards of JJ Hospital, where I was a medical student. These were patients who had interesting medical history and clinical findings. And I was collecting them for Ashok Bhai, Dr. Manu Kothari, whom I call Manu Bhai, and Dr. Ajit Phadke to study on weekends. I stood by as they took the history, examined each patient, and then discussed findings to reach a diagnosis. This was bedside education of high quality, and I have benefited greatly from him. A more recent opportunity that he provided me was to be part of the Division of Humanities, named after his dear friend and colleague who had recently passed away, Dr. Manu Kothari. You are about to witness a dialogue between father and daughter, pioneer and current researcher, guru and homegrown Sishya, and this dialogue will inspire you. I could not have hoped for a better person to interview Ashok. Dr. Vidita Vaidya is a nationally reputed researcher in the field of neurosciences and is head of the Department of Biological Services at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. She is also Ashok Bhai's daughter. Her mother, Dr. Rama Vaidya, is equally renowned as an endocrinologist specializing in reproductive biology. Welcome to a memorable experience.
Now I request the tech team to play the recorded interview of Dr. Ashok Vaidya.
I'm Dr. Vidita Vaidya, a professor at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and it is my honor and privilege today to interview Dr. Ashok Vaidya, MD PhD, an alumnus of St. GS Medical College. I'm conducting this interview on behalf of the M.L.Kothari Chair at the GS Medical College. So let me dive straight in. You were the batch of 1954 that joined MBBS at St. GS Medical, am I right?
Yeah, 1954 was the really a wonderful year to join GS Medical College.
So let me ask you, how did you find yourself drawn to the medical profession, or was it that it chose you instead?
Well, I belong to four generations of medicine, and as a consequence, it was almost like a predestined that my great grandfather was a great Vaidya, grandfather was a modern allopath, father practiced integrated practice, and obviously from childhood I felt that I will become a doctor, and that too for the purpose of not only medical practice but to advance the scientific knowledge in medicine to serve humanity.
Do you remember how old you were when you first came to GS Medical College, and what was your first impression of GS Medical College and KM Hospital?
I was just 17 years old, and it was first time I was getting separated family, living all by myself. But the very ambience of GS Medical College was very welcoming. And as a consequence, I did not feel homesickness. And second thing that my close school friends, Dr. Gandhi and Professor Manu Kothari, were my classmates. And Manu and myself stayed in the hostel together. So it really took away that feeling of being away from home.
Can I ask you, do you remember anything about the admissions process, and was St. GS Medical College always your first choice, or did you have some other options that you were thinking about?
It's a wonderful question. I wanted to go to Grad Medical College because I had heard a lot about Grad Medical College and relatively less about Gordon Das Medical College. But at that time, government stopped all the admissions of Gujarat students for medical college to restricted to Gujarat medical colleges only. And but GS had a unique admission policy. They took the top 5 of several universities without, and they gave them priority without even considering their score. The top 5 were taken. But I still felt, so I went to Dr. Jivraj Mehta, who was finance minister of Maharashtra government at that time, to try to see whether I can get a Grad Medical. He persuaded me, said that GS Medical is a wonderful college and it's a better college than Grad Medical. I argued that you are telling because you are the dean of that medical college. But he convinced me that the scholastic atmosphere of GS was most suited for my foundation, robust foundation medical studies.
Do you remember any question you were asked in the middle of that interview? Is there anything that is tickling your memory box that you remember from that day?
It's very interesting that the dean took interview of every medical student and he had some unique questions to ask. And one of the questions he asked was very interesting. What are your hobbies, Mr. Vaidya? And in my youthful bravado, I told him that my hobbies extend from Holy Gita to Hollywood. And he gave me a wonderful smile. And I think that at that moment I cherished that GS would allow me my broad interest to grow.
That's wonderful. Do you have recollections of specific faculty members from that time who may have influenced you and really left strong memories in your mind from that phase of your education?
For the basic sciences, I had some wonderful teachers. And I particularly remember Professor C.K. Deshpande from pathology, who later became the dean. And he was such a wonderful teacher that he impressed me that how pathophysiology of a disease is so vital to understand. And our relationship lasted long. He developed a special fondness for me, and we had a wonderful relationship for a lifetime. And in the Department of Pharmacology, Professor Roger Lewis from abroad was my professor, WHO professor. But halfway he left, and Professor Yukesh came from Nair Medical College, and being MD in medicine, his clinical pharmacology predilection was wonderful. And as a consequence, I really had wonderful teachers in pharmacology, Professor Gaitonde, Professor Satoskar, and I developed a lifelong interest in pharmacology and clinical pharmacology.
You know, as a neuropsychopharmacologist myself, I would love you to tell me about Dr. M.V.L.Kothari, who is perhaps one of the luminaries in this space in our country. Did he teach you? Were you in a classroom when he was teaching?
Yeah, he was my teacher on the clinical side, and I still remember his tutorials in angina pectoris and coronary heart disease. And I was so impressed by his I would say, refined culture. He was a Lasker Award winner, which is equivalent to the Nobel Prize in USA. And he impressed me with his work on Sarpaganda, Rovalfia. And that, in a way, infected me for understanding the mechanisms of medicinal phytochemicals in terms of molecular pharmacology, in terms of experimental pharmacology. And later on, I was responsible for building an institute of Dr. M.V.L.Kothari Institute of Cardiology at KEM, along with Professor K.G. Nair. That was really an opportunity.
So, you know, those of us who have not gone to medical school dread the idea of the dissection hall. Can you tell us about some of your experiences? Do you have any specific recollections of being in the dissection hall at GS Medical? What was that like?
A wonderful question. My first dissection was axilla of a young lady who was burnt, and her face was turned towards us in her rhizus almost. And when we dissected the axilla, we found the axillary artery to be abnormal. And it was a novel finding at that time. So we went to our demonstrator and showed him, we have found, Professor Dr. Koticha and myself, that we have found this abnormal branching of axillary artery. He just shrugged it off, and all our enthusiasm was not responded to. I learned the first lesson. Sometimes your teachers may not be the best ones to encourage discoveries and new findings.
So, you know, they say that in an institution, if there is a cathedral or a temple, the temple of an academic institution is its library. What was your experience like in the GS Medical Library? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Library was like my second home. Hostels, wards, lectures and library. That was the life. And GS Medical had a really extremely rich library. And probably I was one of the few who went to the postgraduate library also. Because in those days, undergraduates did not go to postgraduate library. And sometimes the postgraduate looked at me a bit quizzically, what are you doing here? But I lived through Lancet, I lived through BBM, British Medical Journal, Nature, and I was surprised that why we were deprived of these in undergraduate library. And one of the things I remember very early was the discovery of serotonin and how it was covered. And Now you know that my lifelong interest in serotonin, my first paper in New England Journal of Medicine was on serotonin and hypothermia. And now I'm working with you on serotonin in terms of the molecular mechanisms at receptor level in the neurons. And that's really amazing journey from those library days.
You know, such things are addictive in that they catch the imagination of generations, because who would have imagined that as your child playing in your lap or sitting in your library at Sibagaigi that I would have picked up that fascination that you have with serotonin and continue that journey. So that is indeed my privilege and honor to do that. I know that just like the library is such a critical component of an academic institution, for a medical institution, the greatest learning space is right by the bedside with your patients. Can you tell us about some patients or experiences you had that have stayed with you over the decades, which came in your early years of your medical education?
I will illustrate one singular example. I had a patient of Hodgkin's lymphoma who had severe anemia, marked spleen and hepatomegaly, and enlargement of lymph nodes. We had to give him multiple transfusions for anemia, and I was surprised to see that as 2 or 3 transfusions went, his tumor melted. Almost, that is, splenomegaly, hepatomegaly regressed, his lymph nodes almost disappeared. This made such an impact on my mind, and later on in my life I always focused on what molecules exist in biological fluids which can regress tumor, and that interest is continuing even now with my PhD students and also nationally and internationally.
Yeah, that is an understanding of how humoral factors can shape sometimes solid tumors and liquid tumors as well, and that there is much that we can learn from biology in this regard. Amongst all the learning experiences you had at, say, at GS Medical, is there one that you carry with you till date that changed the way you think about learning and your experience of learning itself?
It's a very interesting question, because up to almost first MBBS I was competing always for the rank. I used to state first, second, like that. From first MBBS I decided to study for myself. And I understood this, that ultimately your lifelong love for learning, that can only emerge if you take up your own education in your hands. And my thesis for MD was on Bhrigu Samhita. This was the first thesis probably in entire India on history of medicine, and that too of Bhrigu Samhita, a manuscript which contained Ayurvedic maxims. And this was promptly rejected by the examiners. That made me determine that sometimes your original efforts may be completely thwarted, but you should never take it to heart, and you must continue. And as a consequence, I dedicated my life to Indian knowledge systems, reliable ancient insights and modern discoveries. And next month I am fortunate to be given DLIT by this University at Bangalore for contributing to ancient systems of knowledge, Indian systems of knowledge and clinical pharmacology.
As a clinical pharmacologist who has such a deep interest in Indian knowledge systems, how did you learn to navigate the fine balance between a deep reverence and respect for the empirical and experiential knowledge of Indian knowledge systems, and at the same time, the importance of a rigorous examination of the veracity of the observations made by Indian knowledge systems? How do you learn and manage this fine balance? Because I think it's a vital lesson for those in India who are now going to explore the knowledge base that comes from Indian traditional knowledge.
It is indeed a very difficult and complex question that you have asked. In my view, A reverence, genuine reverence permits questions and never disallows questions. Our entire tradition of Upanishad is catechism. It's essentially question answers. And if you really respect your rishis, you can question them. I think that the current, what I would say, fanatic recall of that we had all the discoveries done, we had all the science done, and it is initially document, then you do exploratory good studies with robust markers, and then also laboratory studies to understand the mechanism. I think that that path is the right path of reverence and critical evaluations.
Let me ask you a question to go back to some lighter memories from your years at GS Medical. Can you tell us a little bit about your friendships? Did you play any pranks? Was there something that you did that got you into trouble at that time? Can you go back to some lighter memories of that period?
Well, I was usually a very well-behaved, well-disciplined boy. But as I stayed in hostel, I learned that I have to develop my own resistance, my own mechanisms to protect myself. And partly I joined occasionally a mild ragging gang for the new medical students. I regret that. It was not bad, but it was like conducting a medical examination before you go for interview. And at the same time, what was most wonderful was that we had a small group, like Dr. Jain Doshi, Dr. Koticha, Dr. Ramesh Shah, Dr. Lalit Shah, and several other, Dr. Fosdar. And we used to meet every week in the garden of the medical college. And we used to discuss spiritual matters, we used to discuss socio-ethical issues. And I think that we were looked down upon by the large crowd of medical students, and we were subject of a cartoon. And in this cartoon, it was shown that Manu Kothari was smelling the rose in the hair of Raksha Koticha, who was also one of our Jankhana members. Ramesh Shah was stating with his gown, "Forget spirituality, let us discuss the role of spirituality in surgery." This cartoon appeared on our wallpaper, and I have preserved that cartoon for lifetime.
What about hostel life? What was the most horrible food you had to suffer through in the hostel, and what was the one day that you used to all be excited because something functionally edible was being provided? What was the worst thing you ate and what was the best thing you ate?
Hostel mess were truly a mess. And we had to have separate messes because veg and non-veg never mixed. So there was a Gujarati club, there was an Aryan club, there was another cosmopolitan club. And these clubs gave different menus. And I always found it very funny that we all study together but we can't eat together. And I tried to democratize this mess, and I said that the students will run the mess. And I became once the secretary, so I had to go to Baikala to buy fresh vegetables. We always waited for Sunday because there was a feast on Sunday.
You know, each college has its popular student hangout where people like to go. For those of us as Xavier's, it used to be, right around the corner. We had a bunch of places we used to go to. At GS Medical, what were the popular student hangouts at your time? And do you know if any of them are still around? Have you ever gone back and revisited?
Well, immediately next to our college and hospital, we hardly close by restaurant. So we had to go to Parel Titi for a Madras cafe. And that was the only place at that time which we used to frequent as medical students. Most of the time we had to either to go to Fort area or to Chopati or to Dadar. And particularly Dadar circle was a very popular place for my Maharashtrian friends because they would love to look at beautiful Maharashtrian girls. And this occasion was for them a kind of a relief.
Okay, let's go from the ridiculous now potentially to the sublime or potentially the torturous. Do you have any memories of examination hall experiences which were in the zone of torture, where you would not have, I mean, bad memories that are still stuck with what you went through in the examination hall?
Well, I never liked examination basically because I felt examinations are unnecessary if you have studied throughout the year very well and you have been also looked at very well every year at your progress during the year. So I do remember my MD examination and Professor Nathubai D. Patel, physician to Vallabhbhai Patel, he was my examiner. So when he came to the case examination, he asked me, so you are the boy who has written Ahar Shuddho Sattva Shuddhi? And this was on the essay I wrote on sophisticated diet and disease. But the examiner remembering it and bringing it out was a great reward. But during the Viva, I was at a distance and examining a slide. One examiner was not keen to pass me at all. And Nathubai got angry and shouted at him, what have you got against this boy? He has done wonderfully well in theory. He has done so well in my long case. Why do you disagree with me? And that again sustained my faith that examinations can be properly conducted too.
As an alumnus of, say, GS Medical, and it's now been 70 years since you entered that wonderful institution, what has your continued association with GS Medical and KEM Hospital been after you finished? You did both your MBBS and your MD from GS Medical. Over the years and decades, have you continued to retain an association with your alma mater? And if so, then how?
Yeah, it's a very profound question. When I went to Yale University as a Merck International Fellow in Clinical Pharmacology, the Dean and Professor both had promised that on your return you will be absorbed in the academia. But when I wanted to return, they said there is no job at all of that kind of clinical pharmacology. But fortunately, I could not join that, but fortunately, because I joined SIBA Research Center, we had a SIBA ward at KEM Hospital. And we built one of the most reputable clinical pharmaceutical unit in the country and in Asia. And subsequently, I continued my association very closely. And I feel that my having started the past Gosumec Society of USA with KG Nair was one such contribution. And later on in suggesting Professor Manu Kothari chair is something which I feel has continued my association, and my colleagues and students, Professor Nilima Kshirsagar, Dr. Urmila, Dr. Thatte, they have continued close relationships in research also.
I think Dr. Nitya Gopte is still at KEM.
Nitya is still at KEM in charge of clinical pharmacology, and the department is doing very well.
That's wonderful when legacies carry on a culture and transmit that to the next generation, because that is something that is profound and powerful, and institutions outlive the walls of the institution if they create legacies that get carried by alumni and mentees, not just to that institution but across the world as well. Can I ask, if you had the chance now to go back and redo something at GS Medical? It's 70 years since you went there as a student. Some young person is entering it in 2024, I'm sure. If you had a chance to change medical education for them and shape it in a way you think that might be valuable for the next generation of India's doctors, what would be 3 of the big changes you would bring about?
The first change I would love to do is that not to expose the students only to anatomy and physiology right away. because the dissection of the body and the physiological mechanisms give an understanding that human being is like a machine, and mechanistic understanding of health and disease suffices. So I would love to have earlier contact with patients so that they can realize that patient's disease is not patient's illness. Patient's illness has to be handled by healing, and those healing qualities of a physician can be developed earlier. That is one change. Second change, I would love to eliminate examination because I hated them. And I would say there should be a continuous evaluation, and very few should be failing at any time because the brightest ones have been admitted to the medical college. And third, last thing is that they should have exchanges with Indian systems of knowledge, Indian systems of healing, and there should be a kind of dialogue amongst the systems of India.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashok Vaidya, also my father. So it's a rare privilege that you get to interview your father at the same time as also interviewing one of India's leading clinical pharmacologists, an MD PhD, in an era in which MD and PhDs were, combined MD PhDs were indeed rare. Both he and Dr. Rama Vaidya, also a GS Medical College alum, are the unusual MD PhDs of that generation. And I'm the one that I call the least educated in the family. I only have a PhD, managed to escape on the MD front. But perhaps this is an indication to the community that we now need to grow a cadre of MD PhDs who can have a lifelong love as clinician scientists with a deep exploration of the fundamental basis of biomedical disorders. Would you like to have some
I would like
message?
to thank Professor Sunish Pandya, whom I could insist to take up the chair of Manu Kothari, my close friend, and Dr. Lopa Mehta, the Dean of KEM, and several professors who have played immense role, and students particularly. They have taken up humanities and ethics in their stride, and I feel very proud that in memory of my close friend, this has happened. And I thank for this opportunity to share some of my thoughts and experiences with you.
Okay, I think I will take over now, Gauri.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that was a wonderful interview by with Dr. Vidita of Dr. Ashok Vaidya, and it was truly enjoyable to listen to Sir's experience. We now have another treat for our viewers, an interview of late Dr. Manu Kothari by Ms. Gulsareen Dastoor ma'am. Before we play the interview, I'd like to say a few words about Manu Kothari sir, and it is indeed my privilege to be able to do so. Dr. Manu Kothari sir was an alumnus of the 1954 batch. A brilliant student, sir obtained his MS from the University of Mumbai in 1963. As a student itself, sir had done such phenomenal work. He had suggested a novel method for measuring fixed adduction deformity in the diseased hip joint to Dr. Hamilton Bailey, the author of several notable textbooks of surgery. Sir's test was proven to be correct and was subsequently included by Dr. Bailey in his textbook, Demonstrations of Physical Science in General Surgery in 1960. Sir then joined the Department of Anatomy and rose progressively to become its head in 1981, and then he retired in 1993, after which he was conferred the status of Emeritus Professor. He continued to serve and enrich his beloved alma mater, our twin institutes, St. G.S. Medical College and KEM Hospital, till his death in 2014. Sir was an anatomist par excellence, a philosopher, and a prolific writer who has written several essays and books, not just on anatomy, but also on embryology, genetics, and a masterful treatise on the nature of cancer. As a student, we loved his lectures. His talks and his lectures were truly like a celebration of life. There was not just teaching of anatomy, there would be music, there would be songs, there would be stories, anecdotes. And as students, we would marvel at how effortlessly Sir could quote not just from medical textbooks, but also Shakespeare, Socrates, and even the Bhagavad Gita. Little did we realize that we were not just learning anatomy in those lectures, we were actually learning life's lessons. We loved his anecdotes and his witty one-liners that he would write in his very distinctive handwriting opposite the anatomy office outside the microanatomy class would make our day. We really enjoyed our time in anatomy because of Manu Kothari, sir. Sir led by example as he taught us, his students, the virtue of and the importance of simple living and high thinking, the importance of upholding the dignity of our noble profession in these times, and of giving back to the society when he would organize blood donation camps or even medical camps, which we as students could be a part of and learn from. So many of Sir's students have learned so much from him that it is a small wonder that in these virtual reunions that we've been having, every single batch that Sir has taught has thanked Sir for his teachings and for being there for them. And I think that is the greatest reward that a teacher can get. So today, we bring to you a recorded interview of Manu Kothari Sir by Ms. Gulsareen Dastoor ma'am. The interview starts with Madam asking Sir as to why he did not choose clinical medicine. So I request Mr. Tushar to please play the interview.
So I took to orthopedics, but my boss was very jealous of my science in orthopedics, known internationally. So he hated me. And I realized I can't work with him. So I walked out of orthopedics. Looked around and there was anatomy, 10th January 63 I joined. And after that I never looked back, never. Anatomy was kind of a dead science, but I have not found 15 minutes dull in the department. And Lopa was my student then.
Okay, now this is where we start with the big one.
Can you switch off the fan?
In fact,
Can you switch off the fan?
would you like
switch off the fan?
yeah, would you like to know about he was brought up in Karachi.
No, we need to know more about KVM.
Because the
What is it, yeah?
sure.
Anatomy is never a preferred branch, much less then. But my father had been retrenched from the job for his honesty, and I have 6 brothers and sisters to be brought up. So I couldn't have gone abroad. So I looked around, there was a job available. I took it and never looked back. You see. And then what happened? I started working on cancer then.
Where?
Here only. In 61 I started working. But I was in a blind lane, and then in 68 Lopa and I worked together on some project. And on a particular Wednesday she gave me an idea which solved the entire problem. Yeah. So the whole book was born, and now we are kind of world authority on cancer in many languages. So we worked for a while, and then we proved it damn well right. So Lopa and I have been together as a student, of course, from 63 to 68, and as colleagues, co-worker from 68 till today. It has been a good run, really good run. And I was fortunate to be in a department I was never asked what I should do as a boss unto myself. So I have never taught my subject. I always went beyond. So I was given a fish pond, professor of anatomy, teaches everything except anatomy. So then,
But that's the very reason. Because now all those students who come back and tell that yours were the only lectures we still remember. About him. Because he gave them much broader vision, perspective. Because standard learning you can learn from many places, books, everywhere. But he gave vision to students.
so were I born again, I would be again a teacher. Maybe in the anatomy department, because my needs have never been beyond chappals, a trouser, a t-shirt and an apron, period. Nothing more. I don't have a car. I travel only by train. But I'm best when I'm busy doing nothing. So we have quite a few intellectual breakthroughs, love. On cancer, we have established ourselves world over, both in terms of thought and practice, mind you. It's not abstraction. Down to the last patient, what we said is applicable. And then subsequently we work on death. I lost my brother at a very young age. He was only 30, he was like my son. And then I was musing over the point of death. What is it? What is it? So we brought out a book, which is published in England, subsequently published here. But it has come up as a very brilliant, very satisfying text. And after that we have made forays into immunology, cytology. You see, we're the first to point out that bones are not central to our being. Bones come later. So you and I are fully formed in a mother's womb without a spicule of bone by the time embryogenesis is over. So bone only comes as an afterthought. Whereas Gray's Anatomy says everything is attached to bone, we question. I said, how can it be attached to bone when bone comes late? So either nothing is attached to it, or if at all bone is attached to something, not something is attached to bone. And we managed to prove that bone in your body or in a whale's body is like air in a car tire. It gives shape to the tire, takes shape of the tire, but is not attached to the tire. So this has been a big breakthrough in anatomy, you see. So to that extent, being here in GS has been a lot of freedom of thought. So then I got involved in HIV/AIDS, and I'm quite convinced that the holy humbug is not there. The virus is not there. AIDS is not there. The test is not there. The diseases are not there, but money is there. So right now we are penning a book, HIV/AIDS Dogma, Fact, Fiction, Fraud, Funds and Future, for the fearful lay and the ignorant learned. So I would say all my life the habit is with Lopez, I'll question why. So recently when Penguin America brought out a dictionary of modern thought for the 21st century, okay, it has got 60 essays, 3 by us, 58 essays, 3 are by us, on cancer, coronary and cloning. And we have summed up everything in 1800 word flat. And then a women's group in Bangalore, they collected 55 intellectuals from the southern hemisphere, world over, and had an anthology in 2 volumes with a Mexican proverb as the heading, Asking We Walk. The whole idea is take nothing for granted, question it. So we have an essay in that, an illness called medical science. So it is our very considered conclusion that modern medicine is patchwork palliation. The subjects it researches on are incapable of being researched upon. 1979, 14th March was Einstein's 100th birthday. I love that man. I went to Princeton only to see his house, 112 East Mercer Street. And Harding described him as the greatest Jew after Jesus Christ. Great guy. So we wanted to pay him a compliment. So from physics, where normality, relativity, uncertainty, and time exist, we brought it into medicine. And we had a lasting chapter called The Trans Science of Disease and Death, which says from common cold to cancer you can't research on, not possible. Because the inherent factors are such. We have proved it scientifically. So it's not a speculation or a thought, but it's a proved theorem. And then people said that we are Luddites, we don't believe in progress, and there is CT scan and MRI and what have you. So we ended up the trans-technologic aspects of disease and death. From common cold to cancer, the scan and all don't help. They only help to palliate. So we are now coming to a sober conclusion that when I told you about Walden Pond, Henry David Thoreau was asked, what are the 3 principles which have guided his life? And he says these are simplify, simplify and simplify. World over, medicine must be rendered very simple, very cheap to teach, very short in duration, and rich in sports, Shakespeare, Vinoba, dancing, music. And you will produce very, very useful doctors who will do the job that is needed without being burdened by so much of dross, so much of doing, so much of wasting, and so much of fear. Yeah. So at the end of this is my 56th year in KEM. I joined in 54 as a student. Unbroken 56 years. And I have come to a conclusion that what this institution practiced some years ago, a walk-in hospital, rich or poor, you walk in, you are treated, you walk out. It's not for the hospital to charge, because illness doesn't choose, it arrives at random. And then if you have to worry who will pay and how, that's very wrong socially. Because her father, when he got cancer, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and since this leukemia world over occurs 1 in 50,000 people, generation after generation, country after country, and race after race, when it occurs in one, it has spared 49,999 of that problem. So her dad for a while was Jesus Christ, taking the cross on himself for others. Or like Lord Shiva, taking the poison so others don't have to take. Now this man is serving the society. You can't punish him by charging him. So inherently, good, adequate, prompt medical care without consideration of a single pie is a state duty. Same thing for education. I was taught in a school where the fee was 1 paisa and the yearly rent for books was 2 rupees. So my yearly expense for many years, primary, secondary and high school, was 2 rupees and 12 paisa. And since I often got more than 75%, I got 20 rupees scholarship. So every year I used to save about 17 rupees, And the dhobi was next to me and the cobbler was next to me. That democracy which it brought, that simplicity. I don't think modern schools which charge lakhs of rupees mean anything. There's a kind of snobbishness, but nothing more than that, And all my life I have taught only by a piece of chalk. I'm going to Hyderabad, I will talk on HIV and cancer. I never carry a slide, piece of paper, no projection, nothing. Straight talk. And I'm dreaming of that kind of thing in a medical college. No notes, hardly any textbooks, one-to-one, save paper, communicate, expand the mind, simplify. And once you simplify medical education, medical treatment also will get simplified. And fairness would arrive, really. So the 5-star culture which has come is a great tragedy. Another tragedy is the medico-legal suits. So now much of medicine here or abroad is defensive. You do something because the learned judge doesn't know what should have been done. So it's better to err on the side of doing. And you end up overdoing to nobody's advantage. So in fact we need a national consensus on how to trim the dross of curriculum, how to give free time for Shakespeare and sports and swimming. How in a medical college? Thirdly, the curriculum should be such that not a single coaching class is needed. Beyond your teaching hours, there is no need to learn. Okay? And fourthly, the science of epistemology, which has come up in the last 25 years, it's also called gnoseology. Gnana is the science which evaluates any piece of knowledge and tells you what you can do with it, what you can't do with it. Now just consider 250 years ago an apple allegedly fell on the pate of Newton and gravitation was born. After that we know everything about gravitation except that we can't make apples fall up. Apples must fall. So even if I know everything about coronary, everything about cancer, that doesn't mean they will listen to us. I know about it. I know about Mars. But that doesn't mean I'll be able to alter the orbit of Mars. Or like when Obama says we'll give you a United Nations seat, somebody rightly said he's giving us a ticket to Mars. Yeah? Kothari, your nation will sit on the United Nations panel. So much of what we are doing is blind. And we had a meeting in Delhi. It was convened by Google for equitable distribution of health. People from all over India had come. And I was asked, I said, look, don't ask for a single pie from the government. But world statistics show that 9 out of 10 things which you prescribe or do are wrong. So at a national level, you first arrive at a consensus. This need not be done, this need not be done, this. So you will have 10 times budget than you have now. And then you will give equitable distribution. So there are certain eternal laws of biology which doctors do not know or feign not to know. To give you a classical example, cancer chemotherapy reminds me of Shakespeare. If a rose by any name smells as sweet, or thorn by any name pricks as deep, because there is no cancer chemotherapy on earth. The launching statement by Karnofsky of SKI, the famed Sloan Kettering Institute, agents known to cause cancer in animals are to be used against cancer in man. Ergo, today America admits that the commonest cause of cancer beyond age in mankind is cancer chemotherapy itself. And I have been going to Tata since 1954. And they didn't have the decency nor any other institution that there is nothing like cancer chemotherapy. It doesn't exist. Okay, but they won't tell it. About 63 we came to know that cancer cell is a normal cell. It doesn't multiply faster than others. So all our ideas of attacking the cancer cell are gone. But they won't admit it because it means big business. And there is Harrison's textbook of medicine, you know. Big. In America, everything is big. Everything has to be big, you know. Like I am reminded of a enter room of a psychiatrist in America where one patient tells the other, do you know, he thinks that my inferiority complex is the greatest he has seen so far. Oh! So in America, bigger the better. So these texts are massive. But on coronary bypass and angioplasty, for the last 1980 to 2010, there is an unchanging statement. We do not know how these procedures work. Firstly, you have a plumber at your home. He puts up pipe and then tells you, I don't know whether it will work. But the following are the three theories. A, placebo effect. The pride of having spent. Or the consolation. 2 is sensory neurectomy. When you do a bypass, the nerves are cut off, so the brain doesn't know that the heart is diseased. And third, and this the book says most likely, bypass and angioplasty relieve pain by killing the complaining segment of the heart. Ergo, every bypass and angioplasty harms the heart, kills the heart. When the heart is killed, the nerves of that portion are killed, so you stop feeling the pain. The most tragic, useless, harmful surgery on earth, but done rampantly because the money it begets is enormous. And this is the international truth. I am not telling you anything off the cuff. Whatever I told you is verifiable internationally. But we are so much into medical business, and the common man has been made to feel that it's own, you know, film mein, mera mama bimar hai, paise chahiye, so you all 5 stars hospital, till today I have not seen a single rich man getting 1 breath extra on the strength of money or a poor man denied one breath for want of money. So I conclude that having stayed in KEM and having stayed the yeoman work which KEM has done, KEM should be a normative institution for intelligent medicine. Now let us differentiate between intelligence and brilliance. It is intelligence not to make an atom bomb. It is brilliance to make an atom bomb. It is intelligence to refuse to make black money because it is anti-national. It is brilliance to make black money. So when I was reading a poem by a mentally handicapped child, whom in Rajkot where I work, we are calling them mentally spatial, not handicapped, mentally spatial child. He says, I can't manufacture even a knife. And you fools so brilliant manufacture atom bomb, chemical, biological warfare, AK-47. So I have very little regard for human brilliance, very little. In fact, in the last 500 years, the biggest burden on earth is human brilliance. It destroys. And humanity can't manufacture a grain of rice, a shaft of sunshine, a drop of water, or a waft of air. No, get lost. So current craze is to deny the needs of a dog, cat, you and me, and manufacture a toy, call it TV, or your handycam, or what have you. And what are we doing? Cluttering the earth with things which the earth won't be able to dissolve for 500 years. Now just imagine, I feel guilty because the earth will take 500 years to metabolize this bottle and it will clog. We can't give good air, we can't give water, and we are talking of health for all by 2020. The spelling is changed, HELLTH. It is health for all. So we are barking up a wrong tree, my dear. And let me conclude. We have stated in that essay an illness called medical science, that medical science is ailing from basic binary blindness. Like in the computer where you have the code of 0 and 1, your body, her body, and a whale's body and a tree's body is made of 0 cell and 1 is the fiber. Okay? About cell, we know nothing. About fiber, we know still much less, because if insulin is 48 amino acids, collagen is 1052. It's the most complex molecule on earth. That's why they hide it, survive. So modern medicine is blind, is ignorant, and it reminds me of a bishop. You know, most of the bishops are vain and arrogant. From Vatican, he had gone to another town to deliver a lecture on how to go to heaven. So put up in a hotel and wanted to dash off a letter to Vatican. So he writes a letter, comes down, some urchins are playing around, and he says, hey boys, where is the post box? So one of the children says, Holy Father, give it to me. He goes. So when he comes back, the father is effusively thankful. He says, boys, what can I do for you? The boys are not interested. So he said, look here, tomorrow I am giving a lecture here on how to go to heaven. Why don't you come? I'll give you free passes. And the moment he says that, they burst out laughing. They can't control their peals of laughter. So dear father is nonplussed. He says, why are you laughing so much? He says, Father, you don't know where is the post box. And you want to take us to heaven? So whether it's Tata Memorial, whether it's CVTC, whether it's New York, whether it's National Institute of Health, in my mind, so much crap. And worst of all, such cruelty to animals. I think the cry the cure of animals which we have slaughtered have hit the human mind. And from CDC Atlanta, Georgia, which is a vainglorious topmost institution on infectious disease, has come the report that the medical experimenters have decimated the monkey population of the world by to 1/10 the original for their medical experiments. So the viruses which are peaceful residents of these monkeys are now hunting human monkeys. So we have Ebola there, we have Sudan, we have chikungunya, we have swine flu. So all these are the misdeeds of medical man. And you are never told that these are the misdeeds of medical man. And the man who has reported said that one whack of nature and the most important parasite on earth, namely man, will be wiped out. One biological tsunami and none of us would be there. So Edward O. Wilson, who should get a Nobel Prize soon because his work devoted his life on ant, he says, if the ant vanishes because of pesticides, 100,000 precious plant species will vanish. If because of atomic Diwali, man vanishes, within 50 years the earth will bounce back to its pristine glory and beauty. So we are the scum of the earth. And a medical institution has no right to treat the scum at the cost of a good dog or a good cat. No way. So Arthur Koestler writes, don't imagine Indian rishis did not know experimentation, but they found it too mean to harass an animal for the sake of man. And I confirm that Byron wrote an epitaph to his dog Botswain in Birmingham. He just said Botswain. It's a big elegy, but he says, here lies Botswain. He had beauty without vanity. No Kareena Kapoor here, you know. Beauty without vanity, strength without arrogance, courage without insolence of a terrorist, and all the virtues of man without his vices. So we have to have an animal house where we don't go to drag the animal to the experimental table, but to learn from them, to play with them. And Solzhenitsyn in Cancer Ward writes, when we stop loving animals, we'll stop loving mankind too. That's what exactly has happened. So the roots of the current rot are quite deep. But all that it needs, yes, is a little humility to accept that we are on the wrong track. And the readiness to change, period. Like Vivekananda says, you know, like in a film, there is a chariot going on and man is being dragged after it. Mujhe bachao, he's being dragged. So Vivekananda halts the chariot. And then he makes the man realize that you are holding the rope. Very famous statement by Vivekananda. You are holding the rope, snap it. So if medical science complains, ye hai, wo hai, sir, you are on the wrong track, what can you do? Clear? So time has come when you can stop all research institutions on cancer and coronary or on antibiotics and get to the business of ease whenever and whatever the disease. That sums up the entire modern medicine. And you like a song? No. Okay. It's on medicine. Okay. We are done.
What about your cars?
What about?
Your hobby of...
Oh, I tell you what. I'm writing a book on car. And I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Persek, ZAM. And there he says it is the Buddha nature of oil which runs your car. Between the cylinder and the piston, there is a space of 25 microns, so 3 red cells. But that film of oil prevents the two rubbing against each other and gives your car a long life. So, but for that oil, okay. Air is the most a fluid is most infinitely incompressible. So your tire, you know, when I ask people what is the strongest part of a jumbo jet, they start talking this and that. I have to say the nitrogen in the tire, you know, as a person from airlines, that they don't fill in air because oxygen corrodes the tire, they fill in pure nitrogen. But that nitrogen takes the weight of that monster. So air which looks gentle is the most incompressible. So it's the biggest incompressibility of a fluid which runs your show, you know. And you conclude that it requires an idiot to start the car, but a genius to stop it. You see, you have to just crank the key. But when you are in a speed, the first thing, the brake never stops the car. It only stops the wheel. As a secondary event, the wheel must go into friction with the road. Perchance it does not. There is no brake. Once you brake, the car is out of control. You have to consider the momentum. Yeah. So you really require a genius to stop the car. And the kind of driving I see in the roads of India, we don't deserve even a bullock car, I can tell you that. But one thing I don't use a car myself, but we have 2 cars in the family. I maintain them in showroom condition because I respect the personality of the car. You take care of your car, the car will take care of you. So I find car is a very living organism. And having worked 9 months in Toyota garage by now, a human body will forgive a surgeon's mistake. A car will not. So when I change a Toyota engine, on that there is a contact plate inside where each bolt must have a torque of 65 pounds per square inch. Okay. So I got to take a wrench, set it to 65 pounds, and then when I get the click, that's what precision. It's very nice. It's very relaxing. And I'm 75 plus, okay, now. But I can lift the huge star down and put it up. And it makes you feel good, really. It's very nice, very nice. So car is my passion. And now I'm writing a book on the principles and the pleasures of owning a car. You know, you must respect the car. You must. You know, we'll ask our camera person, does the steering wheel guide the car? No. Steering wheel is round. How does it tell you direction? So you look at the snout of the car and see, look at the paradox. Steering wheel is round, doesn't say right, left, center. So you always look at the snout of the car and then, so 2 great truths. What is the most important part of an elevator? What is the most important part of a car? Brakes. Unless, otherwise you kill somebody, kill yourself or kill somebody. And unfortunately, no dictionary says automobile should be auto stop. The most important part of an elevator is the counterweight. Absolutely. No counterweight, no lift function. See, it looks dead, but it lowers the lift gently and it elevates the lift powerfully. Come on. So in car, brake does not stop the car, take it. And the steering wheel does not guide the car. 2 ordinary truths, huh? But very vital. These 2 truths are, on a single day in Christmas in America, more people are killed on the road than sharks have devoured them from the time of eternity. Peter Benchley's jaws made us paranoid towards shark. Shark is an innocent animal. And till today, the shark has not killed more than 500 people. 585 people die on Christmas Day in America. So who's the killer? And I was so colossal. 70 million sharks are slaughtered every year. And the body thrown, fins cut off for shark fin soup. Because shark flesh is not good. Only shark fin. Can you imagine this? Can you? So while we go out in a jihad of curing mankind of all illnesses, we should tell mankind. Maybe Carl Linnaeus told you Homo sapiens, but that was hope. Reality is different. You are not sapient. You are not wise. And therefore we need not squander money on you, because in any case, it doesn't help.
What is your strongest memory of, what is your strongest pleasant and your strongest unpleasant memory of being there?
I don't like to regret the past, so I wouldn't say that I had any unpleasant memory. It happens in life. That a lady fell down and developed gas gangrene. The wound was so small that gas gangrene was not expected. But I was an orthopedic house surgeon. I was made into a bakra and dismissed from the job to appease the patient's relation. Fair enough. That's why I went from surgery to anatomy. It had to be case sera. And most pleasant memory is the freedom I have enjoyed here. Oh. Where in America, for my views on HIV/AIDS only, I would have been bumped off. They kill you. Whereas here, that freedom of thought and expression, nobody minds my telling openly that this is wrong. You know? Whereas elsewhere, you are told to toe the police. America is not democratic. No. One of my colleagues in HIV, he had 42 projects. He has been stripped bare now because he has went against the HIV AIDS lobby. America is not. I think India is far more, with whatever you might say. So the pleasantest memory of GS is the freedom. And otherwise, it's okay.
Do you still see a lot of your students?
Big one?
Your students, do they?
Oh, I know it's like this. When I see a student, I see a person who has more neurons than I have. Because we lose about 25,000 per day. So I am the least neuron man just now amongst all this. So I should respect the person. So I had defined a teacher. A teacher is a resident of the democracy of intellect. This democracy of intellect was a phrase given by Jacob Bronowski. So that's a book by him, Democracy of Intellect. A teacher is a resident of the democracy of intellect. His task is to take the student to the outer limit of the teacher's knowledge and to the beginning of the teacher's ignorance, thereby establishing an equality which is the heart of any democracy. I have never taught, I have always discussed. I would say discuss, no taught. Teaching is vain and conceited, and then you realize that the young minds are bristling with energy and ideas. And if you really want to remain young, be with students all the time, most of the time, really. Yeah. And the sheer joy of learning, which should be non-utilitarian. Yeah. Saraswati does not like to be bullied by Lakshmi. Yeah.
If you could change something about one thing about KU, what would you change?
I love it. I love KU. I love KU. It needs upgraded, make it a normative institution. Don't put it on par with everything else. Because once it becomes normative, others will take the lead. One institution should be such that you can look up to. Let it have a privilege. The government should do it. Because it has all the merits and all the workings thereof. Really. And then what happens? You have the whole of India. You create one good institution. Then you don't have to plan how the other institutions should be. Why not? Just one. Make one good Toyota and then the rest is assembly line. But here what is happening is, in the so-called equality and democracy, nobody gives that thought. When we talk of democracy, it is the impossible task of choosing quality through quantity. I am ethics committee chairman for many years now, okay? And we have each meeting lasting into 5 to 6 hours. And the international visiting team was shocked when I said that I never
Now I would request the text reflections video by Dr. Bhagat.
A very good evening to you all. It is indeed my pleasure to speak about Reflections on Medical Humanities, annual volume published by Dr. Manu Kothari, Chair and Division of Medical Humanities, Gosumec Alumni Association, under the patronage of Dr. Sangeeta Rawat, Dean, St. GS Medical College and KEM Hospital, Mumbai. The first issue of Reflections was published in the year 2019, the theme being History of Medicine, Looking Back to Improve the Future. The book comprises invited essays, poems, cartoons, quiz, crossword, and articles which were published before in different medical journals on evolution of branches and development of specialties in healthcare, great personalities and inventions in medicine and healthcare overall. The issue for the year 2020 was based on interpersonal relationships in healthcare. Again, invited essays and cartoons on doctor-patient relationship, doctor-doctor relationship, and medical teacher-student relationship were included. For the year 2021, we chose very apt theme of COVID-19, the human angle. Essays and poems in English, Hindi, Marathi, paintings and photographs contributed by teaching and non-teaching staff and students of St. GS Medical College and KEM Hospital who shared their experiences both on personal and professional fronts during the pandemic. The theme for the year 2022 was literature and medicine. It is a collection of articles, book reviews, and poems in English, Hindi, and Marathi, and also paintings and cartoons related to the theme. Now, for the years 2023 and 24, the proposed theme is Reminiscences, Our Days at St. GS Medical College and KEM Hospital. As we move towards the centenary year of our institution, let our fond memories come alive in the form of nostalgic writings about our learnings, not only medicine, but also life lessons that we learned here. Let us talk about our devoted teachers who inculcated values and shaped our lives, priceless friendships which we cherish lifelong. Our writings will instill a feeling of pride and a sense of belonging in all of us, the readers of the book. We, as well as the future generations of students, will understand the power and beauty of expression and reflections. We will be enlightened about the history and glory of our institutions, past students who have contributed to the welfare of the society, and the role model teachers and mentors. We know, irrespective of the generation, we are bound by a common bond of being GSites. However, we also need to accept and adapt to changes which are inevitable following technological advances and societal transformations. At the same time, the students will learn that even though the changes are occurring, the humanitarian values and principles of ethics are unchanging. Hence, we appeal that the reminiscence and nostalgic memories shared on this platform of virtual reunions be expressed in the form of writings to be included in our next issue of Reflections. I, Dr. Swarupa Bhagwat, Editor Reflections and Associate Professor, Department of Transfusion Medicine at this institution, will be privileged to connect with the individual batch coordinators for sharing more details regarding the same. Thank you very much.
Now I thank our Dean, Dr. Madam, and academic Dr. Pathak Sir, country support and encouragement. We thank the Gosumec Alumni Association administrative support, correspondence and financial Dr. M.V.L.Kothari and Division of Medical Humanities. We thank Mr. Tushar and Mr. Badal for audio, visual, and technical support, and Dr. Mhatre for video recordings. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank Dr. Pandya, Dr. Ashok Vaidya, Dr. Vidita Vaidya, Ms. Gulsirin Dastur for the interviews. Thank you.